Hello, I'm Damea. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Your navigator for the IC, and we introduce you to our first Fireside Chat of 2020-2021 academic year, brought to you by the IC and the ASWCC Programming and Diversity Board. The Fireside Chat program continues to bring diverse perspectives to welcome as we engage in social justice opportunities. We do pronouns to introduce ourselves, to invite people in to our space, and we understand that your pronouns are a part of who you are. So we like to respect everybody as they come in.
Hi, everyone. My name is Digo. I am the ASWCC Vice President for Social and Educational Programming. My pronouns are he, him, his. And as we begin today, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people and honor the Lumni, Nooksack, Samiso, and Samish who have cared for this land since the time immemorial. It is easier to deny Indigenous people their rights if we historicize their struggles and simply pretend that they don't exist. I would like to take this opportunity to commit myself to the struggle against the system of oppression that have been dispossessed Indigenous people of their lands and denied their rights to self-determination, which is essential towards their human rights. To find out more information about the Indigenous territories you live in, you can visit native-lands.ca. And if you are currently abroad, I will encourage you to find out more about your native lands and the history behind it so that we can respect it even more. Thank you.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Hannah. I use they, them pronouns, and I am this year's ASWCC president. Today, Jesse will be sharing his story and talking to us about civic engagement. Right now and throughout this year, ASWCC is putting a big emphasis on civic engagement. There's just a little over 2 weeks today until ballots are mailed out in Washington State, and we want to make sure that all of our eligible students, faculty, and staff know how to register, fill out, and return our ballots. If you need to register to vote in Washington State, update your registration, look up your elected officials, print your ballot, look up your closest ballot box, or look up your voter's guide. Go to votewa.gov, that's vote.wa.gov. In the August primary, hundreds of ballots were rejected in Whatcom County alone because they were either postmarked after the deadline or did not have a correct signature. And while obviously not all of those people were students, all races in Whatcom County and across the country are extremely important, and many have been decided by coin tosses or even just 1 or 2 votes. I will not take too much of your time, but please reach out if you want to learn more or get involved. I would love to have you. And I will put my email as well as the website I mentioned before in the chat. And I will pass it back to Damea.
And Hannah, going off what you just said right quick, in the IC, we have on Fridays now talking about how to vote, workshop type of thing, from 2 to 3. So if you guys need to vote, know how to vote, why you should vote, please come to that. But now I'm going to introduce Jesse Moore. So Jesse Moore, founder and principal consultant at the Common Thread Strategies, provides strategic messaging and creative support for social change. He has applied his leadership roles, such as vice president for civic engagement at Rock for the Vote, and a speechwriter and associate director of public engagement at the White House. He managed President Obama's strategic partnership with artists, celebrities, and entertainment leaders, and led the branding effort around the president's My Brother's Keeper initiative in support of young men of color. Jesse served as the communications director for human services at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and as a public official at the Administrator for Children and Families. Prior to entering public service, Jesse was a communications and outreach counselor at Western, working with the low-income families and students of color. He has graduated from Western and has his degree in political science. So can we have a round of applause for Jesse Moore right quick?
And my turn?
Yes.
All right. It's like one of the more uncomfortable things on earth to just hear someone read your bio, just for what it's worth. I don't know if anyone else agrees. So thank you. So I should start with my pronouns, which is he, him, his, and also just a thank you for joining me, and thank you to Janis for continuing in your role as my life and career coach over the years. So I'll be very brief on kind of my story, and hopefully go longer on answering questions. I want to make sure there's plenty of time for that, but the really brief overview of my story is I'm a Northwest kid. I grew up in Linwood, went to Malik Terrace High School, and I was the youngest of five. My mom raised five of us by herself. She never referred to us as poor, but she would say broke. We were broke. So grew up there, went to Western. I looked at schools kind of elsewhere as well, but Western ended up being kind of the place that looked good and we could afford it. It was the move. And so at Western, ironically, at Western in Bellingham is kind of where I found my voice a little bit, as a leader and as a Black man. Yeah, I'm Black, by the way. I should say that because I'm light skinned and we're we're on video, identity. But I found my kind of voice as a leader and a Black man in Bellingham at Western. Joined and helped lead the Black Student Union, the Ethnic Student Center. You guys may be acquainted. And I guess worth mentioning is in one of my last years at Western, I wrote a letter to then Senator Obama. So this was probably like 2004 or so, 2005 maybe. And I wrote him a letter just because we're like mixed kids, talk a lot about kind of civil discourse, and I was just kind of like feeling the vibe he was putting out there. I know this is weird, but this is like when he was nobody. This was like I found his book and read his book, and then, oh wow, that guy's book I read is speaking at the Democratic National Convention. Weird. And so I wrote him a letter, and just how much I appreciated kind of the work he was doing to try to repair what then felt like a horribly divided country. Didn't think it could get worse. And I actually got a letter back from his chief of staff in Illinois. And she was like, you should come intern with us. You should come out to Illinois and do a stateside internship. And guys, I literally didn't have the loot for a plane ticket. Like I didn't, and to get housing secured and like do the kind of things I couldn't do it. So I like got the exact response I needed that I never even thought would be a response and couldn't do anything about it. So fast forward a few years later, he's running for president. It's a longer story, but I haphazardly kind of take some leave from my job at Western and go join the campaign. And I was 25 when I did that. And I've been kind of on a roller coaster since then. And you heard the rest of the bio. So when I joined the campaign, I was just unpaid, knocking doors, tons of calls, caught pneumonia, walking pneumonia twice in 2008 in 1 year. It was an experience. But that random kind of latching on to a candidate and really being kind of inspired by him and what I felt like he could bring led me into some interesting kind of career twists and turns that continue today. So since, campaign, administration, White House, and then I opened up my own consulting firm, and now I'm speechwriter and political consultant to organizations, candidates, and yeah. So serving this campaign is the honor of my life, and there's nothing I'd rather do more in this moment. So you get my point that, it's a little like the CIA in the sense that you're never out. It's like you can go out, start your business, go do your job, and campaign season comes around, and somebody's gonna tap on your shoulder and ask you to serve again. This looks like a group with questions, and so I should be clear. You can ask about anything. You can ask about Western and the Northwest, me personally, and what this wild ride has been like, or where I'm hoping it goes next. I'm an Aries. What else do you want to know? You can also ask about the current election that's going on, if you want, or if you want to just emotionally divorce yourself from that experience at this moment. I would totally understand.
There's a question in the chat. Why vote?
Good question. Now I'm going to look you up. Oh, asking for people who ask, like asking for a friend. Okay. So if there's any rule of speech writing, it is to tailor whatever you're saying to your audience. So that's the first rule of any type of messaging or communication is, who is my audience? What do they know? What do they need to know? And how do I help them get from one to the other? That's it. So I would say, I guess that's the first dodge of the day is, it really depends on who you're talking to, because there are some people who, if they're not voting, it's because it's not a habit yet. It's just not, that's a lot of people actually. It's just, people in my family don't really vote. We don't really talk about it. It's not like a thing. I don't know. That's one group. So the answer for people in that group is, for me, is you have to see elections as an opportunity to start a new tradition in your family, where you are the people who are making decisions for the country and your community. Okay. For people who say, oh, it doesn't matter, they're going to pick who they pick. I say this as somebody who has personally sat and watched votes get tallied and counted, and watched those numbers go all the way up the precinct, the county, the state, and then be added to national numbers. I've watched every level of it. I can promise you that if you show up and vote, it counts. If you decide my vote doesn't matter, and don't vote, it won't count. And I hate to put it that simply, but it is that simple. There are a lot of people in this country who are very frustrated with the system, who feel like they're being, cheated or left out, and that is extremely valid. It is extremely valid. There are people who are angry with the system and feel cheated and left out, who always vote because they are trying to work within the system to advocate for themselves and for the issues and ideas and people they care about. And there are people who are frustrated with the system who don't vote. The people who are voting are the ones who are making decisions. So if you're looking around saying, like, who are all these people who are voting for Donald Trump? Like, I get, like, who are they? Like, how is this most of the country or half of the country? The answer is, they're channeling their anger into their votes. They're channeling their frustration into their votes. If there's a segment of the population that is kind of using their anger and frustration to say, I'm done, I'm washing my hands of this and walking away, that shows up with who wins and loses. Now, something kind of across the board for anyone who's saying why vote, for me, is always to talk about local elections. So I've seen politics at several levels. And I think if there was an aha moment that I remember from the first kind of year in the administration, it was like, wow, almost everything that I've always cared about is actually being decided by mayors and police chiefs and sheriffs and district attorneys. Like, those are the people who decide who gets locked up and how and for how long. Where are police being deployed, and what are their priorities? What is the budget for our school system? Is there a way to equalize funding across zip codes in a way where race and ethnicity isn't a determinant factor in how good a education you get? These are all questions that matter a lot and have very, very little to do with what the President of the United States and his appointees do. Okay, I mean, they absolutely set a tone. They absolutely set kind of a national debate and participate in that debate. But there is no sheriff in America that reports in any way to the federal government or the president. They don't. They don't have to do anything that the president says. So part of the problem with the modern media culture is we are obsessed with the presidency, and we're obsessed with kind of the biggest possible stages, when in reality, the person who's actually going to make a decision that really affects us probably lives down the street and got elected by like a couple hundred votes, and can be absolutely upended with just a little bit of interest from the people around them at the supermarket. So that's a long way of saying, I guess the elevator pitch version of that is, remember that the presidency is on TV, but the people who are being elected in your neighborhood, in your community, in your city, they're all around you, and they're the ones making decisions that affect your everyday life. Being part of a democracy is not a free ride. It's not easy. It's not fun most of the time, and it's really friggin' frustrating, but that's part of the deal, is that it requires our work and engagement, and it requires us to do more than be pissed. It requires us to learn and act.
That was really powerful, Jesse. And I'm not saying that just to make your head like swell, make you feel like that was a really powerful message. And one thing that I'm thinking about, we have these great questions in the chat. I encourage you to take a quick look. As I think about the community of the Intercultural Center specifically, if you'll step back in time with me, Whatcom County, Bellingham area, Western, Whatcom Community College, we have students of color who are coping with so much. So one of the questions here is about hope. Another question is about how do you keep your cup filled? I'm thinking, can you talk to your experience as a student of color in this area, Whatcom County? And now that you've now made everybody care about our local elections, how do we just stay in it? Like you just said, it's the people are channeling their anger, but how do we stay in it when our students are thinking about their families? They're thinking about how safe it is for them to walk across the street, and they're trying to do homework, and they have this election in front of them.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts and advice for our students of color specifically?
Yeah, I mean, that's real. And especially now, like, it's always been tough. And, the kind of meta challenge for people like us is, and I'm like channeling my mom when I say this, is like being broke is not like, I love how a lot of politicians, especially in the right wing, sorry for being partisan now, what are you gonna do? But talk about poor people as if they're lazy. Like, try being poor for a couple weeks and see, and see how chill and relaxed you feel. Like, there is nothing that spikes anxiety on a just consistent basis like being broke. So you're already busy. Like, you're already trying to get from job number 2 to pick up the kid to drop the other one off at soccer. Like, you got a lot going on, and now you realize, oh, it's my responsibility to also advocate for myself in an election season. It's my responsibility to learn what's on the ballot and what's at stake. So that is to say, we can never minimize people's engagement level. We just have to try to make it easier and try to support them and try to push people to prioritize it. That's it. In other words, it's not easy. It's just necessary. It's another thing that is absolutely necessary that is tough. So I guess I'm kind of going against your question. I'm like telling you why it's hard, but how you stay in it, or how I stay in it, is, well, here's two things. One is I try to always tie anything that's frustrating me to action, just big or small, something. So if I'm frustrated with something, I watched last night's debate and I'm like, good God, like, it's a horrifying experience. And I watched that. I now, because I have gone through that experience, I watched an hour and a half of this, and I'm having an emotional reaction to it that's going to last longer than that. I'm going to take a moment to write down an hour and a half of action I can take to try to push back against what I just saw. So, I mean, that's a really tactile thing. May sound nerdy, but it's like, if I'm going to spend emotional energy to be frustrated by something, do I have the will and discipline to spend at least equal time acting against it and fighting against it? And, it's not, again, not easy, but that is something that you can do to hold yourself accountable. The other one, also not easy for a couple reasons, but is to engage with people who disagree with me fundamentally on things as much as I can. In the modern media environment and the way that demographics are working in our country, it's becoming harder and harder. It's like every time you watch someone say something on TV or on social media or at the grocery store, and you're like, what planet is this person living on? Like, how are you just going to gobble up these lies, so readily? Realize they're looking at you saying the exact same thing, because you are living on different planets. You have a completely different social media experience. You have a completely different source of information. You have completely different news sources. You're talking to completely different people. You are on different planets. And so you're speaking a different language to somebody, and that's how we get dehumanized against each other. That's how simple political disagreements and divisions between parties or between ideology, whereas before it would be like, yeah, back in the 1930s and 40s when Janis and I were going to college, we would disagree about something, and we would look across each other and say, like, I see what you're saying, but I disagree with you on X, Y, and Z. Can you get with me on this? Do we agree on that? Okay, we agree on that. Maybe explain to me a little more on what you mean on that. Those conversations, how many of those have you had lately? They're kind of dying, right? And how many of those do you see our leaders having? Especially last night, can you imagine a conversation like that on a debate stage? How refreshing would that be? Like, it sounds like we agree on this, but I can't really get with you on that. Explain a little bit more what you mean and how you do everything in your power to create spaces for those conversations with people who don't agree. And it's really hard. It's really hard. But if we're not doing it, that is the death of democracy. That is the most, hyperbole you'll get from me today, but I don't think it's hyperbolic. I think that's true. I think democracy dies when we let it die, because we are not doing the work it takes to fight against kind of the inertia of modern media and political discord that's going on right now, and say, how can I get myself in a space with someone who disagrees with me to try to feel out and understand where they're coming from, and to help them understand where I'm coming from. And maybe we'll stumble upon 2 or 3 things that we agree on that we can work together on. Good one. Grab it.
Well, I'd actually like to invite everyone in the room to ask a question. I know that some of you have typed some questions out, but this space always works better when you speak. So I invite you to ask your questions out loud, and then Jesse, you can check out the questions in the chat.
I had a question. I mean, you kind of answered it already, about like getting like different perspectives and whatnot. But what are some of your like go-to news sources?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a hard one to answer in the middle of election season when I'm like, you know, this isn't. I'm not like voter consuming information right now like the way I want to be. Right now, I'm like trying to win a fight, so I'm mostly like, you know, dealing with our communications and press team who, you know, are like, here's what's going on, here's what we're saying, what do we need to say, that, you know, those are the conversations I'm in right now. But broadly, you know, there is a fix that needs to happen to our media structure, and you know, it's a complex fix, but it involves creating news sources that are built to compete, that aren't profit-driven corporations. You know, in the simplest sense, if you are running a news division for a cable news network, your fidelity is to your board and your investors, right? Mm-hmm. So your job is to drive up profits. That sits right here. In our Constitution, we protect the right of journalists and a free press because they put it in the Constitution, which is not a long document, by the way. Read it. This, you know, next time you go to the bathroom, like, this joint is small. All right. So they took the time to put a large section in there about press because the framers saw that as a key part of a free and open and functioning democracy. Okay. Now, those two things run into conflict. One is saying, you know, one is, how do we get more profit? How do we get more clicks? How do we get people to tune in longer to Rachel Maddow or to Sean Hannity? How do we get more people to stay tuned in over the commercial break? Okay. That doesn't drive you nearly as much to say, how can we get this right? How can we get this information out correctly? How can we get it out in a way where people will understand it more and be able to make decisions based off of it? What that drives you to do is, how can I get people to watch this more? How can I get people to feel obsessed about it and keep watching it? How do I get people glued to the TV to watch this like it's a new Stranger Things? Like, it is absolutely built around capturing your attention, right? That is a very different thing than, let me give you the facts and let me help you think this through. The other side, where it's a free press built to support a democracy, for that we need facts, for that we need access, for that we need respect for journalism. So I'm not even actually answering your question. I apologize, but I'm outlining why that question is important, and, you know, and also why, to a certain degree, I do consume news from outside the country sometimes. The BBC, Al Jazeera actually does some pretty good work, and they're not as invested politically as a lot of the sources in the country. The Times, the New York Times, is the standard bearer, and for me, it's for a reason. I mean, they go deeper than most. And I guess this is the last thing I'll say, because people will hit the Times and say, oh, well, the Times is clearly opposed to Trump because Trump hits them all the time and they hit back. And, you know, I try my best to not. There is a theory of journalism that is, well, we need to show both sides of an issue, right? And that's kind of like, even in high school and college, that's kind of how they talk to you about journalism. It's like, oh, well, you need to be able to give both sides of an issue. That's true when there are two sides to an issue. There are things that are facts. Those exist. They're real. It is very tricky to figure out who are the arbiters of facts, who gets to decide what's fact and fiction. But if anyone's doing it, it is an organization like the Times who's going to say, here's what's happening. So in other words, we have to be able to understand the moments when we are supposed to show both sides and the moments when we're supposed to say, okay, here is a fact. Here's what people are saying about it, but we can't find any truth to that. That's journalism, and that's why it's hard.
How do you respond to, like, okay, yesterday during the debate when Trump was like brushing off like white supremacy and stuff, how do you respond to like family members and friends who are like Trump supporters, but they're ignoring the things that he's saying, or they're turning a blind eye to it just because they're like, oh yes, Trump, I love him. How do you like respond to those?
Well, most of the time when I'm trying to, most of the time when I'm talking to someone who's a Trump supporter, who I should, more narrowly define, that's, there are Democrats and independents who are Trump supporters. There are Republicans who I know would never vote for Trump. And, but Trump supporters are kind of a unique brand. And they run a long gamut. Some are really, boisterous and proud about it. And they've got flag in in their car. And there are others who are just like I just kind of like what he's doing for the economy, and they think that he's running the economy in a way that helps them. I am happy to talk anyone through why that's probably not the case, unless you are trying to evade your taxes as a multimillionaire. But the number one tactic is to thoughtfully ask questions and not just lead with a WTF face. The biggest surprise to Trump supporters is when you actually sound interested in their perspective. And, pro tip to sounding interested in their perspective is to be interested in their perspective. So I guess step one, Kunmi, is take a beat. Just be like, okay, what is my goal here? Is it to defeat and humiliate them? Do I want them to walk away questioning whether they are a good person or not? Or is my goal to bring them a half step in my direction? And I can't tell you what your goal is, but if your goal is the latter, which is usually my goal, I'm going to ask some thoughtful questions about what they think and how they perceive and how they got there. So questions go a long way, especially if they're thoughtful and they seem like you really care. And then the other thing, just kind of that I try to keep in mind, and this is a pure opinion, and I guess put it this way: I think I get the sense there are people who support the president who kind of hear his rhetoric and generally agree with his priorities and his world vision and what he kind of sees. Immigrants bad, coal good, like just on a basic level, like, make America great again is, an annoying phrase on several fronts, but it does speak to things used to be better and now they're changing for the worse, and how do we stop that? So, part of the answer, I think, is there are folks who just feel validated that there's somebody who's as pissed off as they are. And they feel validated that somebody's saying, screw the system, screw political correctness, screw everyone who is living in that world and that reality, because this is my reality and I'm mad. And if there's anything he does, it is validate people who feel angry. So beyond policy, I think there is power in us finding ways to validate the anger of people who are mad. We don't have to validate the reasons they think they're mad, and we don't have to validate the solutions that they think are going to alleviate that anger. But acknowledging and validating that they are mad and that is a reality, and then looking for, some things you have in common. Because I'm pretty pissed about some stuff too. Like we can kind of get together on being pissed. That is a possibility too. I don't know. And I don't mean that in a glib way. I just mean that to say, I think there are ways to reach people who are drawn in by, that level of validation on this is unfair and it's not my fault. And engaging people on that in that discussion can be powerful, and I think it is important.
Like when he said, like when they asked him about white supremacy, and they're like, and he was like, stand back and by, like, and like if you know someone that's like a family member or like a friend who is like, just ignore that, like it's not relevant. Like, how do you respond to that?
That's an excellent question. And I'm not sure I have an answer, because I haven't been confronted with somebody who's told me to ignore that yet. That one's really fresh, so I'm curious if this goes onto the on the mile high heap of shit that the president has said that is completely out of pocket, that just kind of like disappears into the mass of cray. Right. So that one stood out for me in a big way, and I'm hoping it will stick, just because the context here is we're 36 days or something away from November 3rd, and he's the president of the United States. He has immense power, and in that context, as he's being asked about whether we can encourage our supporters to be peaceful when the election results are coming in, if his response is to a violent white supremacist group, stand by, I can guarantee you that they heard him loud and clear. I can also guarantee you that he is going to say, I told them to stand back. I told them to stand back. He's going to just word vomit his way past it like it didn't happen. But that is being written down and noted by members of groups like that. So yeah, I guess I don't have an answer on what exactly to say, other than to say we cannot pretend that's normal. We can't pretend it didn't happen. We have to write that down too, and add that to your list of things to spend some time taking action against. Now you got me all riled up. Dang, Kumi.
So Jesse, we have just a few minutes left. I forgot to tell you at the beginning of this that the Intercultural Center does have a swear jar. So I'm glad we're recording, because you owe us about $8 at this point, maybe a little more. We'll call it an even 8 though. We don't know what we're doing with the money, but we'll figure it out at some point.
Trump Yep.
Yeah, there we go. So we do have a good question, and I know that there's several questions in the chat. I don't know that you'll be able to cram them all in. As a campus, we're talking about how to prepare for the election results, and regardless of what the result is, I think we need to take care of each other. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our campus.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? And how can you help us fix it all?
Yeah, on how to take care of each other in this election, in the aftermath of the election?
I think take care of our students, and then take care of ourselves, take care of each other.
That's a tough one. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the first piece of it is to emotionally prepare yourself for weeks or more after the election, after November 3rd, to get this thing figured out. I think there's with COVID and this many absentee ballots, there are going to be counties and precincts and states that are going to have very long days of counting that they need to do, and recounting and making sure that everything is precise and exact. This is not a job that you would, I have all confidence that the president will go out and count up whatever is counted from whoever showed up in person on the day of, and he will try to declare victory. I would be surprised if he didn't do that. So we all have to start to emotionally prepare ourselves for it to be a longer process than that, and to prepare for the potential that he does that. So the first thing is just like internally and as a community, just saying like, okay, November is going to be nuts. We have a weird one coming our way, and it's impossible to really know exactly what it will look like. The second I would say is intentionally creating spaces to talk about that. And I don't mean that in like, that sounds very hippie of me, and I guess I am from the Pacific Northwest, so let my roots show a little bit. But well, here's an example. I have a few groups of friends from kind of like different phases of my life, who we have like bi-weekly Zoom calls scheduled. They can be thematic. Sometimes they're about mental and emotional health. Sometimes it's about parenthood. Sometimes it's about marriage. But always there are ones scheduled just to talk about politics and what is happening and what we think about it and what we're doing about it. And I really do think that one of the kind of weird sidewinding potential gifts of this COVID era is it's very easy to have a Zoom call with, for work or for school, but we can also do that and be really intentional about it with our friends and our personal goals. So finding the people around you, whether it's through the school or just you and your people, and getting time on the calendar to really kind of vent, connect, listen, learn, and also just share what you're thinking. I don't know, I hope that doesn't sound superficial, but for me it's been a game changer. It's just it's so much easier to just say like, well, every couple of weeks I get a chance to really let loose and really talk about what's going on and laugh and cry. And the discussions about mental and emotional health and the political reality we're living in are starting to merge very, very close together. And I think you'll find the same if you do that. So. Did I answer your question, Janis, at all?
You got there.
I got there.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have a question. Sorry,
yep.
Janis.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm Cecilia De Leon. I'm actually the Student Civic Leadership Fellow, and my pronouns are her, she, and hers. And I just have a question. How would you get the attention of the younger generation to pre-register without them feeling like, oh, it's just another political thing?
Good question. I'm prehistoric now.
My thing is, I'm 40 years old. I was never taught how to vote, so this is actually my first year I am going to vote, since the college here has helped me through everything and shown me. So I'm wanting to know how to get pull in the younger generation to pre-register.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's a really tricky one just because I think people really get on young people about not voting. I mean, the reality is, and sorry everyone who's born in the 2000s, but like, it's hard to get young people to do anything. I mean, I was young. It's like my mom tried to get me to mow the lawn. It was hard, right? So I try not to like put it in the box of like young people don't want to vote. It's like, well, it's just like, it's something you have to do. It takes a little, kind of discipline. It's a habit. You got to like, oh, and now I registered. Now I got to figure out where I'm going. Now it's a thing that you have to do. And it's, it feels probably more to them like the DMV, than it does like, the inspirational experience you have watching like a political show or movie or the debate or whatever. So I guess look for ways to kind of close the gap between the kind of feeling of being American or feeling of being part of our democracy or living here and even locally in your community, like just try to look for ways to close the distance between that feeling and that feeling of membership and ownership and the process that's needed to actually cement that reality. Say, I am a member of this community. I am a member of this country. And I guess the other thing I would say is try to focus less on candidates and more on issues. Because I think we get really, really focused on who is running and who, what do they think and what do they do? And it's important, but it's not as important as the issues. And we can also just always find there are always flaws in human beings who are running for office, period. There are flaws in all human beings, but they're, sometimes amplified in people who seek public office. So if we get caught in no one is perfect and what am I even doing? I don't really like this person that much. Like when you get caught in that kind of personality contest, whether it's at the national level or the local level, you lose sight of, oh, well, regardless of if, who I like and who I don't like, one of these people is going to appoint a police chief who wants to reform police. The other one is going to try to crack down on crime in ways that I think are going to hurt my family and my community. That's an issue. Start with the issue and then start looking for the person who gets you closest to where you want to be. And that's how you participate. So anyway, I think that, focusing more on issues and less on the actual candidates can be helpful with young people sometimes. Young people, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm looking at some young people right now.
A lot of us are actually really interested in voting, and a lot of people are actually pre-registering, and a lot of the people that are already 18 or are turning 18 have registered to vote already. So I think we're pretty involved as far as it goes, but there's still some people that I know that aren't really.
Yeah. Well, good.
With you though, like what you said, I feel like I'm majoring in political science, and I still feel like it's a task to do. It's not really fun always, especially because of the candidates you have to choose between. So it's definitely not fun. It's not attractive. I just had to find my sister. Basically had to beat my sister up to go register to vote. So she registered, but
yeah, I had that. I was talking with the student, and she's like, well, why do I want to pre-register? If because she's Latina, she's like, if I'm not even gonna be my voice isn't gonna be heard, or either way, Trump's not gonna leave office. I was like, but your voice counts, and it just. So I'm just trying to figure out ways, it's like, my goodness, my kids actually voted this year, or pre-registered to vote. We're very in working in the activism work, so I mean, they've seen a lot of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess that leads you to another group of people when you're trying to convince them on the why vote question, which is people who only respond to just merciless guilt tripping, which, you know, is an art. And, you know, I pull all punches on guilt tripping when needed, because it's not guilt tripping in a vacuum. It's real. So it's when you turn on your TV, not even on your TV, when you go to sleep at night and you're picturing a little kid under a tinfoil blanket at the border who has no idea where her parents are, who are literally taken out of the arms of their mother by somebody with the United States government symbol on their shoulder. Picture that kid laying in a cage as you're laying in your bed. Realize she doesn't have a voice. She has no say in what's happening to her, and neither does her mother. You do. And so you're going to stay quiet. You're going to look her in the eye and say, you're on your own. You're going to do that, and you're going to feel okay, and you're going to shut your eyes and go to sleep and dream nothing but sweet things. If that's true, okay. There's nothing to say to you. All right, that's fine. That is your decision. But realize that there are actual human beings on the other side of your vote. This isn't a policy debate. We're not having this isn't crossfire. We're not like speaking into a void about what's right and what's wrong. There are human beings whose lives will be changed. Someone that we love, everyone on this call, someone that we love, we will experience them dying. As they're dying, whether it's over months or years, do we want them to be completely stressed and upset and frantic and panicked about how they're going to pay for the bills of their health care, of their health insurance, while being told by their health insurance that they're not covering anything that they're going through? Is that the reality that we want them to have? If you can go to sleep at night just saying, look, that's just the reality, that's the way it is, and not doing literally the least you can do, which is vote against that, vote for people who understand that that's a problem that must be fixed. If you are a kind of person who can just look at that and somebody you love or somebody that you may never meet who's experiencing that, okay, don't vote. But I have to believe in the humanity of people to be able to get past the talking points in the debate and start to really picture the tactile reality of human beings before they start decisions like, I won't vote. Like, I don't know if she meant it like in that way, that she didn't want to. I think it's more the pressure that Trump puts that Hispanics don't have a right here. Like colored people, they don't, their voices aren't heard. So I don't know if she meant it in that way or if she just, if it's just more of a waste of time. That's important too, though, because I mean, there is nothing, put it this way. It is easier to suppress people's votes, and it's easier to convince people that they don't belong or their voice doesn't matter than it is to earn their vote. Mm-hmm. He wins when she believes that. Okay, so it is much easier. Yeah, it's much easier to convince somebody that their vote doesn't matter or to suppress their vote than it is to earn their vote. So even just at just in a dollars and cents way, they're making an economic decision there, and it's working when people think that way. So,
thank you so much, Jesse. And the last couple of things that you said, I just want to hold space for a moment, sink in, let y'all take some notes because you've been given some action items in just the last couple of things that Jesse said. I'm gonna, as you are all letting that sink in, I'm gonna brag for a second and say that, I'm very lucky I got to go tour the White House with Jesse.
That's
And
right.
one thing that I heard though is that you dunked on President Obama. Did you dunk on him?
Oh my God. Hang on.
Can you talk a little bit about like what were some of the greatest parts about working in the White House? Like I know you were there when the Seahawks came. I know that you played some ball.
Do not.
Just wondering if you really did dunk on him. Like I'm trying to start some rumors here.
Did I say that? Because if I said it, then it's true, obviously. Like that's not something I would joke about.
I might have made it up. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no,
it sounds cool.
If I could touch the net right now, I would be really. I genuinely would walk away from the game. I'd be like, that's all I need to know about myself physically. I'm still got it. So no, I never hooped with 44. I hooped on that court. I hooped with other people. We actually had I can't remember who brought it, but somebody brought me a Western basketball rim for my office. So like all day I'd be on calls or writing or whatever, and draining threes on my Western hoop at the White House. This other guy in my office, David Dietz, who actually ironically now works at the NBA, still to this day, whenever we have a meeting or talk, he brings up scoreboard. He just like, we'll be in a meeting like at the NBA, and he'll be like, hey, thanks everybody for coming in. Jesse, it's great to see you. Scoreboard. Because we ended our term at the White House with him with a dominant lead over me on that basketball game.
Just so we're clear, Jesse, I definitely told everyone that you played basketball with President Obama. So I started rumors, and I'm going to own that right now. I'm probably going to keep saying it just so we're clear.
So I'm the kind of person who I would like to be someone who skydives, who bungee jumps, who does that. I want to be one of those people. Around 27, 28 years old, I decided I am not one of these people. And I saved myself a lot of emotional energy of trying to hype myself up to do shit that I don't actually want to do. Playing basketball with the president is one of those things man, I want to be one of those people who do that. I'm not a basketball player. I played football. I cannot hoop. I was picturing myself out there just looking like a damn fool. I was like, I think the idea is probably a lot better than the reality of actually going out there and doing this. So yeah, steer clear of that space. But did get to drive golf carts around Camp David and stuff like that. There were moments that were actually pretty cool. I wasn't like a caddy. Let me be really clear. This was they're you could just drive around the compound and stuff. There were some fun moments for sure, but they were always tempered with just being physically completely exhausted.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been always inspirational whenever Jesse opens his mouth. I feel like we always get homework, and it's important homework, especially for this community. Jesse, thank you for your time today. I know that you're a busy guy, and there's definitely a question in here, what are you doing on the campaign right now? Which you seem to that question. Maybe we'll see you or something. Who knows? Also, we're up to 850 because you just threw in another one. So 850 for the swear jar.
That's a bet. All right.
So anyone else have some fun? Damea, were you about to say something?
I did have a question, but then the mood kind of changed, and then I was like, you know what? Why go back to the serious stuff? Let's keep it light. But I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm losing my words. I'm in political science right now. I'm majoring in political science, and I'm trying to as you are speaking, trying to find some clarity in myself. So this is kind of a personal question for me to you. It's always different for people of color, but how is it being in a political I guess space with such minimum like diversity? How have you carried yourself, and how have you, I guess, for me is to stay true to myself. I'm always my authentic self, if anybody knows me, and so that's the most thing I'm worried about as I go forward in whatever I'm going to do.
Yeah. Well, so I'll give you two sides to that coin. One is protecting your authentic self is a full-time job and it's hard work. Okay. My mom said something to me when I went to I think it was when I was when I was moving to DC to join the administration, and I printed it. I like wrote it out and printed it and put it on a. I had two quotes above my desk at the White House, and one of them was, "It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't require credit." And that's a quote from Harry Truman. The other quote was, "Hold on to your soul with both hands." That was from my mom, right? So recognizing that in the political space, there will be 10 opportunities a day to lose track of yourself. And it can be as simple as somebody is screwing you over and you have a chance to throw them under the bus. That's a moment. Who are you? What kind of person are you in this moment? And that, I promise you, remember that one, because it's real and it's really hard one to navigate. It could also be, well, it is now my job. In these jobs, you are serving the people, you know. So there's campaigns where you're literally, your job is to serve, a candidacy. You know, it's to say we're trying to win. Those are jobs. Those are very different from government jobs where you're sworn in and you are a servant of the people. And when you do that, it is service. You're not in the military. It's not like, it's not as, the fidelity is not to the level of someone who's literally putting their life on the line every day. But it is fidelity to a broader service beyond your own ideals. Okay, so you have to be able to find a balance between here's what I believe and here's what I want to see change in the world, and here is what my duty is in this job. It's service with a whole chain of command that you're a part of. I guess I say that to highlight there are moments when you're like protecting my authentic self versus protecting this role that I've sworn to uphold. Sometimes there's a little bit of conflict there. If you're serving people that you believe in, that becomes less and less. If you are just a political animal and you're working for whoever, you may lose complete track of yourself. So I guess hold on to your soul with both hands is what I would say. I would also say, I actually was just having this argument with somebody I went to Western with, who was like writing me mildly harassing, not really harassing, just like talking trash to me on Instagram, which happens. But basically was saying like, oh, well, you didn't like last night's debate. Well, it's your fault, because was implying that because when Biden sewed up the nomination, like I was seen on TV saying like, yeah, he sewed up the nomination. Like, this is what happened, and this is what's going to happen. And this person was still holding on to hope that Bernie would figure out some way to win. My critique of Sanders has always been, because I agree with Bernie Sanders on the vast majority of policy issues. And I think he is invaluable to the political debate in the country. I think he is absolutely valuable and has moved the debate. But where I have been disappointed is in the ability to move beyond ideals to pragmatism and say, not in terms of the goals, but in terms of how do I frame this in a way where I can bring people over to agree with me? Because if all I want is to hear somebody say exactly what I think from the biggest stage, okay, if that's all I want, it's kind of back to our validation conversation with Trump, people just feeling validated, like, yes, that. I want somebody to say that because that's what I think. And if that is the goal, then I absolutely, I get that. But my goal is always, how do we get things done? So things that I guess there was a section there where I really thought Bernie was going to win, and I was excited about it. And I thought he would find a way to start saying, okay, here's what I believe. We're going to get in there and get it done. Here's what I can start to move on, like some compromise, so I can bring over more Democrats, because Democratic Party is diverse and weird. And I've heard literal supporters of President Obama use the N-word liberally, like supporters, by the way. This is a very diverse and strange party. And I guess what I'm saying to you is this: play a long game when you can, of here's who I am, here are my goals, but also realize I'm trying to build a larger and larger coalition. So how do I do both? How do I find a way to connect with people and bring them in? And I only use the Sanders kind of example because I'm a fan, and I wanted more. I wanted more to get him to the next level. So anyway, in other words, I equate you with Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. I think we share. I think like since you've been talking, we share one brain right now. Like you don't feel that connection, but I feel that connection. I just might be a little bit more athletic.
No, I'm not saying I don't. I'm saying go make yourself. If that's true, if we have the same brain, go make a therapy appointment immediately. I didn't do that until much later in life. If it's the same brain,
I went through that already.
You're already in. Okay, all right, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, but I said that I might be a little bit more athletic than you.
Okay.
Oh no.
Possibly true. That's possibly true.
Thank you. Also, since you're giving out solutions to the problems, I'm transferring to Western soon, and I want to know, for me, I want to run the campus. I want to dominate. So I'm trying to figure out what groups and stuff I should be what steps I should be taking to just kind of basically be the next Jesse Moore for Western. So I'm trying to figure out how to make myself a name in Bellingham and just leave my mark. I always like to leave my mark on things. So
wow. All right. Well, I have no kind of blanket advice. I'll just say stay focused and be kind to people. I mean, that's if you're, I think Janis, would you agree? If I had a brand at Western, it was knucklehead, always talking trash, but nice to people. I was just nice. I was nice to people, right? Okay, you're a dick. Yeah, I would.
That one's $1, by the way. That one's a full $1, not the 50-cent charge.
But just be kind and learn to be aggressive in ways that are kind, because I think I was also very aggressive when I was there and trying to get big things done. But I guess my style is more bees with honey.
But if we could just do something, in the Intercultural Center, we're never a quiet group, and it's hard. Thank you, Jesse, for talking to a bunch of muted microphones. But if you could all just unmute and show some love for Jesse spending over an hour with us, sharing some. You got me with the quote from your mom, Jesse. I know.
Yes.
And I'm just saying, everybody just unmute. This doesn't have to be a me thing, but you say thank you, give them a shout out.
Thank you. It's great.
Thank you, Jesse.
Appreciate it.
so much.
Put that quote down. That quote is written down.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much. Jesse, I know you're going to go, but everyone else, the IC is open until 4, so you are welcome to hang out.